of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's dive into the top headlines of the hour. President Nicolás Maduro is in US custody at a New York detention center after his capture in US strikes on Venezuela. Maduro and First Lady Cilia Flores are moved from Caracas to Brooklyn to face drug trafficking-related charges. Venezuela declares a national emergency and denounces what it calls US military aggression after the operation. President Donald Trump says the US will run Venezuela until a safe transition and says US oil companies will rebuild infrastructure. It still remains uncertain how the US will run Venezuela or who will be involved, as Trump says it will be a group effort with ongoing talks. Trump says Vice President Delcy Rodríguez shows willingness to cooperate, but she later demands Maduro's release and calls him the only president. Trump also says opposition leader Marina Corina Machado lacks the support and respect to lead Venezuela. Trump says she has not spoken to her as she backs Edmundo Gonzalez and claims he won the 2024 election. Now in other news, the UK Defence Ministry says Royal Air Force jets joined France in striking an underground site in Syria linked to ISIL weapons storage. The operation comes as ISIL is seen as resurgent after a period of relative dormancy in the region. Police identify 16 more bodies from the Crans Montana bar fire, bringing the known death toll to 24, with several nationalities among the dead. Authorities say a criminal investigation is underway as families wait for news of those still missing. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung begins a state visit to China hours after North Korea launches ballistic missiles. Lee is set to meet President Xi Jinping as both sides signal interest in stability, economic cooperation and tourism. Israeli forces shoot and kill at least 3 Palestinians in separate incidents in Khan Yunis, local health officials have said. Medics say the dead include a 15-year-old boy, a fisherman and a man shot east of the city in areas under Israeli control. Now we start with our top story, and Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores are being held at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center after US strikes captured the Venezuelan president and his wife. Authorities flew him by helicopter to Manhattan. Venezuela's Supreme Court has appointed Vice President Delcy Rodríguez as acting president. US President Donald Trump has announced Washington will run the country temporarily, extract oil to cover intervention costs, and deploy American companies to rebuild Venezuela while reimbursing the US for all expenses. Maduro and Flores are expected to appear in federal court in Manhattan very soon as the US moves to hold them accountable for years of criminal activity. Joining us now is my colleague Meher Karana. She joins me live from the newsroom to tell us what's going on and give us all the updates. Meher, thank you very much for joining us. What more can you tell us?
So yes, Thomas, yesterday the United States has launched what it calls its Operation Absolute Resolve. Now Venezuelan President Maduro, he was dragged from his bedroom in the midnight along with his wife and is now held in Manhattan. He was transported from Venezuela to the United States by a helicopter. Now the Venezuelan Supreme Court has stated and has declared that Vice President Delcy Rodríguez is now going to assume all the powers that Maduro earlier held and is going to act like the president till the time Maduro returns, or we have any updates on that matter. Now, United States President Donald Trump has said that US will now run the country. These are some strong statements coming in from him, and he said that until a judicious transition can happen in Venezuela, the United States is going to take over. Now, Trump has said that the United States will extract oil from Venezuela. It's important to note that Venezuela holds the world's largest oil reserves with around 303 barrels of oil reserves, and is followed by Saudi Arabia, Iran, and then Canada. Now, that is why Trump is aiming at the country, and it mainly has extra heavy crude oil, which is unlike the oil that is present in the United States. Now, Maduro is facing 4 charges, to be precise. Maduro and his wife, both of them have been indicted, and narco-terrorism conspiracy is one of the main charges. They've also been charged on weapons and possession of machine guns as well. Now, a lot of reactions have come in from world leaders. Now, recently, Oman has said that it respects sovereignty and is exercising restraint. Now, the first reactions that came in yesterday were from allies of Venezuela, Cuba, and Colombia. From Colombian President Gustavo Petro, he was one of the first people to react. Apart from that, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has also reacted to the strikes that US has carried out on Venezuela. Now, we'll bring you all the reactions and developments as and when they come in. Over to you, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Meher, for those updates. And we have more coming out of Europe, and Pope Leo has called for Venezuela to remain an independent and sovereign nation, saying he was watching developments with deep concern following the US ouster of President Nicolás Maduro. Speaking at St. Peter's Square, the pontiff urged respect for human rights, the rule of law, and Venezuela's constitution. He warned against violence and stressed that the well-being of the Venezuelan people must come before all other interests. Let's listen in.
E venne ad abitare in mezzo a noi. La speranza cristiana, infatti, con animo colmo di preoccupazione, seguo gli sviluppi della situazione in Venezuela. Il bene dell'amato popolo venezuelano deve prevalere sopra ogni altra considerazione e indurre a superare la violenza e intraprendere cammini di giustizia e di pace, garantendo la sovranità del Paese, assicurando lo Stato di diritto iscritto nella Costituzione, rispettando i diritti umani e civili di ognuno e di tutti, e lavorando per costruire insieme un futuro sereno di collaborazione, di stabilità e di concordia, con speciale attenzione ai più poveri che soffrono a causa della difficile situazione economica. Per questo prego e vi invito a pregare.
Joining us now to discuss this developing situation is Glenn Grant, the ex-advisor to the Defence Minister of Ukraine. He joins us live from Riga in Latvia. And we're also joined by Major General Sudhar Kaji, a senior strategic and international affairs expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Glenn, I want to start with you first here. Now, it's amazing how things can change in the space of 24 hours, but now the people of Venezuela find themselves without a leader. Nicolás Maduro finds himself in US detention. And of course, events for the future remain uncertain. What is next for both the leadership of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro and his wife, and also, of course, the people and the government who now have an unclear vision of their future?
Well, to start with the Maduro bit, I'm pretty sure he's going to end up in prison. But it's what happens outside, the reality of what happens outside. We've got to go past the fine words of Trump and actually look at the reality of all this. I mean, the first bit is that, nature abhors a vacuum. And if there's no proper leadership in Venezuela, then people will start looking for leadership in Venezuela. And Venezuela, just to remind people, Europeans especially, is about 1.5 times the size of Ukraine. And that is already a huge country. So to think that you just go in and govern a country like that is pretty daft, to be blunt. And easily forgotten that Maduro is not just the problem. Maduro's got a large following. He's got a gang of people who are pretty nasty. And when people are pretty nasty, you can be absolutely sure that one of them thinks he's going to be the next Maduro. So we can end up with something that's like Syria. We could end up with places that Iraq and Afghanistan, where people are fighting amongst themselves as well as fighting against, hey, American boots on the ground, perhaps. So I don't see anything nice coming out of this, because if the people wanted to revolt, they could have revolted before. If they wanted to persuade the army, they could have persuaded the army to come on their side before. They haven't. So I don't think this has got a nice way to go on that side. And if you just allow me a few seconds, then on Trump has changed his mind more times than we can shake a stick at. I mean, look at all his words about Gaza. What are we going to do with Gaza? Well, nothing's happening there. So I don't see that anything nice is going to come out of this. I'm sorry.
Yes, indeed. Do stay with us, gentlemen, as we move on to our main focus of the hour. And in the wake of the US operation in Venezuela, which resulted in the capture of President Nicolás Maduro and his wife, understanding America's strategic interests in the region is critical. Guyana, a small but resource-rich country on South America's northern coast, has become a key focus. ExxonMobil, NES, and CNOOC have insisted heavily in offshore oil reserves in Guyana's Stabroek block. Production from Liza Phase 1 and Phase 2 already exceeds 2,200,000 barrels per day, with additional projects like Payara, Yellowtail, Hammerhead, Uaru and Whiptail expected to boost output further. These assets are vital not just for global energy markets, but for US economic and strategic interests. Washington has repeatedly pledged to support Guyana's territorial integrity, particularly protecting American energy operations amid regional tensions. Now, tensions in the region have escalated for years as Venezuela increased its military presence along the Guyana border, and satellite imagery in 2024 showed tank drills and missile-equipped patrol boats signaling a direct threat to oil-rich territories. Moreover, in March 2025, a Venezuelan warship entered Guyana's exclusive economic zone near an ExxonMobil facility, demanding information from the crew. Then Venezuelan President Maduro emphasized and formalized the state of Guyana Essequibo, despite Guyana's sovereignty over the area. Experts say that these moves had set the stage for US intervention as they risked American investments in regional stability. Now, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has played an active role in reinforcing US ties with Guyana, particularly in security and energy cooperation. In 2025, he met with President Mohamed Ifran Ali and Guyanese officials, signing agreements to strengthen defense collaboration and counter narcotics operations. Moreover, Rubio had earlier publicly warned Venezuela against using force to claim resource-rich territories, reaffirming US commitment to protect strategic interests. His involvement shows how US policymakers were closely monitoring the region, combining diplomatic engagement with support for military readiness. As we look at the broader framework behind US actions in Venezuela and the region, former ExxonMobil CEO and Secretary of State Rex Tillerman's approach offers insight into American strategy. Tillerson consistently emphasized measures' responses to international threats while also balancing diplomatic engagement, corporate interests and military operations. During the 2025 Persian Gulf crisis, he advocated caution. He warned against escalation while ensuring that US military operations continued uninterrupted. This philosophy of careful strategic planning reflects how the United States approaches energy-rich and geopolitically sensitive areas across the Western Hemisphere. This approach extends across Guyana's offshore oil fields, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, and key strategic routes in Central America and the Caribbean. Major General Sadaka G joins us now to discuss this. Of course, America's interest in Latin America is extremely long. The history is extremely rich of US interference in the southern continent. How does this operation play into that, balancing out the strategic interests for America when it comes to this operation that has just happened, with the regional consequences and even the global consequences of this?
Thomas, good evening. Thank you. Thank you, and a very important question you have raised. There are many subparts, but allow me to start with a subpart which you haven't covered in your question. The entire, I would say, trigger is the factor of de-dollarization, which has missed the woods for the trees, I would say, in multimedia platform. In 2018, Maduro, he publicly announced that he would carry out oil trade in currencies other than dollar. And he went absolutely vocal to announce that he would like to carry out transactions in euros, yen, yuan, ruble, etc., etc. That perhaps, to the best of my understanding, was the biggest trigger which US, it did not augur well, nor did it go down too well. So having given you the preamble, if time permits, if you allow me, first and foremost thing, Guyana is a neighbor of Venezuela. It is divided into two parts, important parts, as far as the oil assets are concerned. Esquiva is that region, that place, where ExxonMobil of USA, it is a company of the USA, they received the license to carry out survey and exploration of the oil rigs or the wherever oil was available in '99. And also try and draw parallels. In 1998, President Hugo Chavez, he came into power. He was a leftist. Since 1998, till date, till yesterday, a leftist regime has continued to govern Venezuela. Also,
Yes.
at the same time, what has happened is we need to understand there are multiple issues. One of the issues is 20 years back, roughly I would say, USA had asked Venezuela to allow USA companies to operate in Venezuela. Venezuela simply refused, it declined, asserting that it is a sovereign nation and all the assets and the resources, natural resources which exist on its soil,
Yes.
will be governed and controlled by Venezuela. That also did not go down too well, because if you study Monroe Doctrine, read between the lines, there is an unwritten understanding. People
Yes.
may be amazed and surprised to hear this. Unwritten understanding is in Latin America, no matter wherever the natural resources are existing, despite the rules of law, that is the sovereign nation where the assets are existing, the sovereign nation is supposed to harness the resources and derive the benefit, or they are entitled to derive the benefits. Much against this understanding, the unwritten law, to my limited understanding, is that USA and its companies have been asserting their dominance and to secure their operational entry
Yes.
such kind of assets.
Major General G, I do apologize about interrupting. I want to bring Glenn in here. Just in regards to this, of course, ongoing situation. Donald Trump and other US officials were very vocal about the United States wanting Venezuela's oil, which of course is the richest proven oil reserve in the world. Now, this has happened. Donald Trump gets on that podium and says that the US will in fact strike that oil. It will rebuild the infrastructure in the country, and install a government that it perceives as correct. What are your thoughts about this and the manner in the way that it's happened, and what kind of precedent does it set?
Well, the manner is going to upset an awful lot of Venezuelans. Let's put it bluntly. I mean, the first group are Maduro's group that has been following him, who are pretty nasty people, and they're not going to like this at all. But also, a lot of ordinary Venezuelans are going to say that they don't like being bullied. They don't like the thought of having their oil stolen by America, and that will turn some of them against US that might have been pro-US if US had just done a surgical strike and then said nothing more. But I just can't see that US and Trump have actually thought through the consequences of what they're saying at the moment. I mean, they didn't have much joy in Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan. And, when you start talking about running other people's countries, you're entering a minefield that, I'm sorry, but military are not best designed for dealing in that minefield. And Trump doesn't have any other tools other than the military. So I think that there's my gut instinct says there's a mess to come. And if it doesn't, I'll apologize and say, well done, whoever did this. But at the moment, I don't think this is going in a direction that people necessarily think it will.
Yeah, indeed. And I want to just bring in Major General G once again in this. George W. Bush, of course, said in 2006, America is addicted to oil. Does this once again reaffirm that point? The actions that they have happened in the last 24 hours?
There is another turning point, if you allow me. I would like to go back to March 2025, which is very, very important and significant. You see, Donald Trump came back to power 2.0 in January 2025. And soon after that, he started driving as to how to bring about ceasefire in Russia-Ukraine war, as per his commitment. But 24 hours just elapsed without his realizing. And before March 2025, he had flip-flopped his decisions. At times he used to penalize or come down heavily on Zelensky. At times he used to impose sanctions against Russia. But in between, he allowed supply of long-range missiles to Ukraine. As per my study and research, this is a very, very vital component in the entire matrix of activities which have taken place. This supply of the long-range missiles to Ukraine soon had manifested in a response matrix in the Cuban waters. What happened in Cuban waters? Cuba, March 2025, there was a strategic military agreement with Cuba and Russia. And also, soon, within a couple of days, the naval vessels of Russian Navy started popping up in the Cuban water, and not many media platforms are covering that. Some of the naval vessels had a missile called a Zircon. Zircon missile was designed and developed to counter the USA naval air defense assets. And this missile has been proven beyond doubt that it is capable of degrading the naval assets of USA. One. Number two, they had oceanic missiles also. As on today, while we are discussing, oceanic missiles have been deployed on ground in Venezuela, by the way. They are Russian missiles, and they were available on the sea platform, on the naval platforms. This missile is a hypersonic missile, moves at a speed of 10 to 12 Mach. There is no radar system which either US or any country in the world have which can detect or penetrate or intercept it. So with this development, Cuban waters and Caribbean are not very far away from each other. It is as good as one is merging into the other. So therefore, the popping up of the naval vessels of the Russia actually, started ringing alarm bells in USA. And then the strategic doctrine or the new national security strategy was evolved, wherein the Monroe Doctrine was adopted, and today I believe the name has undergone change. That was the trigger to tell people like Russia and China that you please mind your business, be in your sphere of influence, do not
Okay.
enter or transgress into the Western Hemisphere. Leave the Americas to me. And mindful of the fact that China has made very significant and deep penetration to Latin America, they also have been geopolitically pushed back to some extent to start with, and with this operation of Venezuela. That is why China...
Okay, Major General G, thank you very much, and Glenn Grant for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you on the programme, but with that, unfortunately, we have ran out of time. Thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World, and stay tuned for more international updates.